The St. Clair Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, was buzzing with activity that autumn morning. The sounds of medication carts rolling by, the constant beeping of cardiac monitors, and the hushed conversations among doctors and nurses composed the symphony of a typical day at this large medical center. Dr. Michael Anderson, a 47-year-old surgeon, strode through the hallways with an air of confidence. Tall with graying hair, he carried a presence that intimidated many around him. Known for his competence in the operating room, he was also notoriously difficult to deal with. Anderson believed his surgical skills placed him above everyone else in the hospital. The cold gaze he cast at his colleagues clearly indicated that he expected them to meet his high standards or be crushed by his fierce criticism. On the other hand, Danielle Carter was a calming presence in the hospital. At 42, she had been a head nurse for over 15 years and was deeply respected by her team. With her dark skin and deep-set eyes, her serenity contrasted sharply with the chaos around her. Danielle always maintained her composure, even on the most challenging days, and the staff relied on her to coordinate work during critical moments. However, there was a more subtle struggle she faced daily: prejudice. Even with all her competence and dedication, she knew many still viewed her differently for being a Black woman in a predominantly white environment. As she crossed paths with Anderson in the corridor, she offered a slight nod. He didn't reciprocate. He walked past her as if she were invisible, as he always did. Asterisk, Dr. Anderson, asterisk, she said, keeping her voice steady. Asterisk, the operating room number 3 is ready for the next procedure, asterisk. He stopped for a moment, casting her an appraising look, but didn't bother to respond. Instead, he continued on his path, focused only on what he considered important: his own superiority and his next patient. Behind her usual calmness, Danielle knew what that look meant. Even after years of experience, she had never been seen as an equal by many of the senior doctors at the hospital. But that was about to change in an unexpected way. That morning would mark the beginning of a transformation neither of them anticipated. The situation at St. Clair Hospital was only getting worse. The emergency outbreak that was overwhelming the waiting rooms seemed never-ending. Ambulances kept arriving with patients in critical condition. The staff was overwhelmed, and the tension in the air was palpable. Dr. Michael Anderson had just come out of a long, complicated surgery. Even with his experience, he was exhausted. His patience, already thin, was wearing dangerously low. As he walked down the corridor toward the break room, he was interrupted by an urgent call from a resident. "Dr. Anderson, we have a patient with a severe hemorrhage coming from the emergency room. We need to prep him for surgery immediately." He frowned, irritated. "What are you waiting for? Is the or ready?" Anderson snapped impatiently. "We're waiting for the nursing team to transfer the patient," the resident replied, clearly nervous under the doctor's piercing gaze. Anderson was not the type of man who tolerated delays. He headed straight for the nursing station, where he found Danielle Carter coordinating the transfers. She was on the phone, organizing the transfer of another patient to clear space in the ICU. "Danielle," he shouted, striding into the nursing area with purpose. "Why hasn't the patient been taken to surgery yet? We're running out of time." She looked at him, surprised by his aggressive tone. She knew the day was tough for everyone, but she didn't expect to be treated this way. "Dr. Anderson," she began, trying to stay calm, "we're handling multiple critical patients. My team is coordinating the transfer as quickly as possible." He cut her off brusquely. "That's not fast enough." His voice echoed through the corridor. "A patient could die because you can't manage your team." The other nurses in the vicinity exchanged uncomfortable glances, visibly disturbed by the scene. A heavy silence settled over the area. Danielle, embarrassed, tried to maintain her professional demeanor, even as she felt the weight of their gazes. "Dr. Anderson," she said, her voice steady but firm, "if you have any complaints, please take them to the hospital board. For now, I have patients to care for." She turned and returned to her duties, holding on to her dignity despite the humiliation she had just endured. Anderson watched her walk away, still seething with anger, but in the background, he could hear the uncomfortable whispers of the staff. Tension in the hospital had reached a new level. The sound of Dr. Anderson's quick footsteps echoed through the hospital corridors. His irritation, fueled by an exhausting day, had hit its peak. As he rounded the corner toward the central station, he spotted Danielle Carter directing a team of nurses. The image of her calm efficiency only heightened his frustration. "Danielle," he shouted, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. "What's going on with the patient transfer? Why is everything delayed?" Danielle looked at him, taken aback by his aggressive demeanor. She understood everyone was stressed, but didn't expect to be treated like this. "Dr. Anderson," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady, "we're dealing with several critical patients. My team is coordinating the transfer as quickly as we can." He interrupted her again. "That's not quick enough." His voice boomed in the corridor. "A patient could die because of your incompetence." The surrounding nurses, visibly uncomfortable, exchanged glances. A heavy silence enveloped the area. Danielle, feeling the heat of embarrassment, struggled to maintain her professionalism, even as the tension escalated. "We're all overwhelmed today, Dr. Anderson. The situation is under control, but we're managing multiple emergencies at once." Anderson's patience was now completely gone. He stepped forward, his face reddening with rage. "Under control? Is that what you call this? I'm tired of excuses," he exclaimed, his tone now even more aggressive. "You always think you can solve everything with your fake calmness, but the truth is, you're not cut out for this job." The direct insult froze the atmosphere. The other staff members flinched at his words. Danielle felt the weight of his comments, but fought to keep her dignity intact. Breathing deeply, she held her gaze steady on Anderson. "I understand you're frustrated, but I will not accept this treatment." Her voice was low but resolute. "Everyone here is doing their best," but Anderson pressed on, clearly feeding off the tension in the air. "Maybe your best isn't good enough. Honestly, I wonder if you even belong in this position." He looked around at the nurses, implying something deeper, something more personal. Danielle, fighting against the embarrassment rising within her, kept her dignity intact. She knew exactly what he was implying, even without him having to spell it out. "If you have a complaint about my competence, Dr. Anderson, you can take it directly to the hospital board," she said calmly, trying to end the discussion. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to work." She turned away, leaving Anderson standing there, his anger still simmering, but with no more words to say. The quiet murmurs of the nurses nearby grew louder. The embarrassment from the scene quickly spread throughout the hospital. Everyone had witnessed the moment when the famous Dr. Anderson had exposed his deep-seated prejudices in a cruel and public manner. When Danielle returned to her station, she felt the sympathetic glances of some colleagues, but also the apprehension of others. She knew many agreed with her, but few would have the courage to stand up to Anderson. Inside, Danielle stayed strong. She knew the public humiliation she had just endured was the result of deeply ingrained biases, but she had a job to do, and she wouldn't let this bring her down. After the humiliating incident, Danielle retreated to the small nurse's break room. The atmosphere was quiet, only the distant sound of monitors and the soft footsteps of doctors echoing down the hallways. She sat in a chair, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside her. Memories of her professional journey flooded her mind. Danielle remembered her childhood, back when she dreamed of becoming a doctor. Over time, challenges began to appear. She recalled how, as a student, many people looked at her with disdain, as if her presence there was a mistake. "Do you really think you can become a nurse, Danielle?" The sharp tone of her teacher echoed in her mind, a memory that still hurt. Now, looking back, she realized how hard she had fought to get to where she was. Danielle closed her eyes, letting the tears flow, not out of weakness, but out of sheer frustration. "Why do I still let this affect me?" she murmured to herself, clutching her hand against her chest. "I've worked hard to get here. I can't let Dr. Anderson make me doubt my worth." In that moment of introspection, Danielle remembered her recent promotion. The idea of becoming the new medical director of St. Clair Hospital had been a huge accomplishment, but the official announcement was still pending. The weight of that responsibility began to give her a new sense of purpose. "You can do this," she told herself out loud, as if trying to convince herself. "You deserve this." As she reflected, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Dr. Roberts, a colleague and friend. Danielle, I hope you're doing okay. I wanted to apologize for what happened. Anderson should never have done that. She quickly typed a response. Thanks, Dr. Roberts. I'm trying to move on, but it was tough. The silence in the room only increased the tension in her heart. Hearing the distant echoes from the hallways, she imagined the conversations among her colleagues. Certainly, everyone was talking about the humiliating scene that had just taken place, and that bothered her. But she knew that what mattered most was how she would respond to it. If I'm the new medical director, I need to be strong. I can't let this define me. At that moment, Danielle decided it was time to get back to her duties and prepare for the announcement of her promotion. As she left the room, she crossed paths with a new nurse, Sarah, who looked at her with concern. Danielle, are you okay? I saw what happened with Dr. Anderson. Danielle smiled softly, trying to project calm. I'm fine, just needed a moment to breathe. Thank you for checking on me, Sarah. If you need support, you can count on me. No one should be treated that way. The nurse's words warmed her heart. She kept moving forward, determined to leave the humiliation behind and focus on her new role. As the day went on, Danielle began to envision the upcoming board meeting where her new position would be announced. She knew this was an opportunity not just to affirm her position, but to inspire those around her, showing that respect and dignity were essential in a workplace. Today, I'll show everyone that I belong here, she promised herself. With that determination, Danielle prepared to face the day, strengthening herself for the battles still ahead. Anderson's humiliation wouldn't defeat her. Instead, it would fuel her to become the leader the hospital needed. After the humiliating incident at St. Clair Hospital, rumors spread quickly through the hallways. The medical staff and nurses couldn't ignore Dr. Michael Anderson's behavior, and many gathered in small groups, murmuring about what had happened. In the break room, a group of nurses, including Sarah and Lucas, spoke quietly, concerned expressions on their faces. Did you see what Anderson did to Danielle? It was completely unnecessary. ***, said Sarah, shaking her head. She's an amazing nurse and deserves respect. Lucas, a more experienced nurse, nodded in agreement. He's always been like that, but this was the last straw. I can't believe he treated a colleague like that, and in front of everyone, added Emily, a newer nurse, looking shocked. How does he think that's acceptable? The tension at the hospital seemed to be growing. In the doctor's lounge, Dr. Roberts approached other colleagues about Anderson's behavior. Someone needs to confront him, said Roberts, crossing his arms. This can't become the norm around here. One of the doctors, Dr. Patel, hesitated. You know how he is. He's a brilliant surgeon, but he's also a feared figure. No one wants to go up against him. But this isn't just about him. It's about what's right, Roberts insisted. Danielle deserves our support, and we need to stand together. We can't let this happen again. Later that afternoon, Danielle walked through the medical staff, noticing some whispered conversations, but she stayed focused on her work. When she saw Dr. Roberts in the hallway, he called out to her. Danielle, are you okay? I was worried about you. I'm trying to handle it, she replied, a tired smile on her face. But thank you for asking. The team is really behind you, he said, glancing around. We've been talking about how to put a stop to Anderson's behavior. Danielle felt a bit stronger hearing that. I appreciate it, really. I just want everyone to know this isn't just about me. We need to change the culture here. As they spoke, Sarah and Lucas joined them. We've been discussing how we need to speak out, said Sarah. Anderson can't keep getting away with this. Lucas agreed. If we all speak up together, maybe he'll think twice before acting like that again. I admire your courage, Danielle responded, feeling more encouraged. But we need to do this constructively. I don't want to create more tension. We understand, said Roberts. But we have to do this for you and everyone at the hospital. It's time to create an environment where everyone feels safe and respected. The group began to formulate a plan to address Anderson in a professional and direct manner. They wanted him to know his attitude wouldn't be tolerated, but also give him a chance to change. That evening, as the hospital continued its operations amidst the pressures of the emergency surge, Danielle retreated to reflect on everything that had happened. The support from her team gave her motivation, and she knew she was in a critical position to make a difference. If not now, when? She thought. I can't stay silent. It's time to be heard. With a newfound sense of determination, Danielle decided she would be the voice she so desperately needed to be. The fight for dignity and respect at the hospital was just beginning, and she was ready to lead the way. The next morning, the atmosphere at St. Clair Hospital was tense. Danielle Carter was preparing for a meeting with the hospital board, where her new position as medical director would be discussed. Despite the support from the staff, she couldn't shake the nervous feeling in her stomach, especially when she thought about how Dr. Michael Anderson might treat her this time. Meanwhile, Anderson, still recovering from the humiliation he had caused, sat in his office reviewing patient files. The blow to his reputation still stung, and he knew his colleagues were talking about his behavior. In the boardroom, the members of the board started to arrive. Anderson entered and took his seat, noticing that Danielle hadn't arrived yet. He glanced around, looking for some way to maintain his image, but the concern on his face was unmistakable. When Danielle finally walked in, the room fell silent. She was dressed professionally, and her posture exuded determination. Anderson, on the other hand, looked uncomfortable. "Good morning, everyone," Danielle said, forcing a smile as she took her seat at the table. "Good morning, Danielle," replied Dr. Roberts, cheerfully. "We're excited to hear your ideas about the hospital's future." Anderson stayed quiet, staring down at the documents in front of him. He didn't want to admit that he was anxious about her presence. The meeting began with a presentation from Dr. Roberts, highlighting the need for reforms and improvements in patient care. Danielle was about to present her proposals when Anderson interrupted. "I think we need to be cautious about making changes," he said, his voice laced with arrogance that seemed to have returned. "This hospital has a reputation to uphold. We can't afford unnecessary risks." Danielle saw through his words and decided she wouldn't be intimidated. "I agree, Dr. Anderson," she responded, her tone steady. "But we also need to evolve and adapt to our patients' needs. The reforms I'm proposing are designed with that in mind." The other board members began murmuring among themselves. Anderson noticed that the room was siding with her, and it frustrated him. "If you think your proposals are the solution, I'll be watching closely to see how they turn out," he said, trying to mask his disdain. "You can count on that, Dr. Anderson," Danielle replied, with renewed confidence. "I'm here to make a difference, and I won't let your behavior stand in my way." The tension in the room was palpable, but Danielle continued presenting her ideas for a more inclusive and collaborative approach at the hospital. Anderson, meanwhile, watched her with a mixture of anger and reluctant admiration. He realized her presence was growing stronger, even in her former position. After the meeting, as the board members began to leave, Danielle approached Anderson. "Dr. Anderson, could we talk for a moment?" she asked, her voice calm and composed. He hesitated but nodded. "What do you want to discuss?" he asked, avoiding eye contact. "I want you to know that despite what happened, I'm willing to work together," Danielle said. "But that requires mutual respect. You can't just ignore my presence or my authority." Anderson was silent, absorbing her words. I understand. ***, he responded, a bit hesitant. "It wasn't my intention to belittle you." "Then we need to make sure it doesn't happen again," she insisted, her gaze unwavering. "We both have important roles here, and this will only work if we cooperate." Anderson felt a wave of frustration mixed with reluctant acknowledgement. He wasn't used to being confronted, especially by someone he had tried to undermine. "I'll try," he finally said, his voice quieter. "But I need time." "That's all I'm asking for," Danielle replied, sensing a small victory as she saw a crack in his armor. "Let's do what's best for the hospital and our patients." She walked away, leaving Anderson deep in thought. He knew that conversation marked the beginning of a new dynamic between them, and it left him both anxious and intrigued. St. Clair Hospital was about to undergo significant changes, and the battle for respect and dignity was only just beginning. The next day brought a new level of tension to St. Clair Hospital. Danielle Carter knew that the proposal she had presented to the board would face resistance, especially from Dr. Michael Anderson. She sat in her office, reviewing patient files as she waited for a meeting with her team. "Good morning, Dr. Carter." Renee, her assistant, said as she entered the room. "Are you ready for today's meeting?" "More or less," Danielle replied, pausing to gather her thoughts. "I have a feeling it's going to be a tough discussion. The resistance to change here is strong. You can count on me to support your ideas," Renee said with an encouraging smile. "You're an amazing leader, and people need to hear your vision." Danielle smiled, grateful for Renee's support. She needed it to face Anderson and the other doctors who might not be ready for the changes she was proposing. The team gathered in the conference room, and the air was thick with anticipation. Anderson arrived first and sat at the table, his expression distant. He didn't want to admit it, but he was intrigued by Danielle's determination. As soon as she walked in, the chatter stopped and all eyes were on her. "Good morning, everyone," Danielle said, trying to appear confident. "Today, I'd like to discuss our new patient care guidelines. And what about your proposed changes, Dr. Carter?" asked Dr. Thompson, one of the older doctors on the team, with a skeptical expression. "Do you really think this is necessary?" Danielle took a deep breath, realizing she was about to face a wall of doubt. "Yes, I absolutely believe it's necessary," she stated. "Our patients deserve more empathetic and inclusive care. If we don't take a proactive approach, we might fail to meet their needs." "This all sounds very idealistic," Anderson said, crossing his arms. "Do you think just changing a few guidelines will solve problems that are deeply rooted in this hospital's culture?" Danielle stared back at Anderson, her resolve growing stronger. "This isn't just about guidelines, Dr. Anderson. It's about creating an environment where every patient feels valued." ***, she responded, with a firmness that surprised everyone in the room. "I don't expect everyone to agree right away, but we need to start the conversation." "A conversation?" Anderson retorted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "That may be harder than you think. Some people won't be willing to listen. Then we have to make them listen," Danielle insisted. "I'm here to lead this change, and I expect you, as part of the team, to support me." The tension grew, and the room was silent as everyone watched the exchange between the two. "I believe changes are necessary, but we need a solid plan," said Dr. Thompson, breaking the silence. "If we don't have one, we're just throwing words into the wind." Danielle nodded, relieved that someone was supporting her idea. "I agree, and that's why I want each of you to contribute ideas and suggestions. Let's work together to create a viable plan." ***, she said, looking at each team member. "And I really appreciate your openness to this." Anderson, still skeptical, couldn't resist one last jab. "And what about respect, Dr. Carter? Do you think you can demand respect without earning it first?" The question hung in the air, and Danielle decided it was time to be honest. "I know I have a lot to prove, Dr. Anderson, but I'm not just the new medical director. I'm also a woman who's here to make a difference. And if you give me a chance, I can prove I'm up to the task." He remained silent, contemplating her words. Danielle knew gaining his trust would be a challenge, but she was determined to do it. The meeting ended, and everyone began to disperse. Anderson approached Danielle, his expression softer than before. I don't want you to think I'm against you. ***, he said, his voice a bit gentler. "I just want to make sure everything is in order." "I understand, and I appreciate your honesty," Danielle replied, a light smile on her lips. "Let's work together and get through this." As she left the room, Danielle felt a surge of hope. Though the challenges were significant, she knew she had found an unexpected ally. Anderson might not be ready to be her friend, but she was willing to take the first step toward a new era at St. Clair Hospital. The morning sun filtered through the windows of St. Clair Hospital, casting light on the cold white walls. Danielle Carter was already in her office, reviewing the latest updates on the inclusion plan she had proposed. Last week's discussions had sparked mixed reactions, and she knew she had a long road ahead. Meanwhile, Renee entered without knocking, her expression worried. "Dr. Carter, you need to see this," Renee said, handing Danielle a tablet with a trending video. "It's going viral on social media." Danielle took the device and watched the video carefully. The footage showed a group of nurses laughing at a distressed black patient while the ward's supervisor simply watched, doing nothing to intervene. The blatant disrespect was so clear that Danielle's anger quickly rose. How was this allowed to happen? She muttered, already standing up from her chair. We need to address this immediately. Social media is on fire, Renee added. People are demanding action. Danielle took a deep breath, trying to contain her anger. The hospital was at a crossroads, and she knew that change had to start there. With a determined look, she headed toward the conference room. When she arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Dr. Michael Anderson stood in front of the table, talking to Dr. Thompson and a few other staff members. The video incident had already spread like wildfire. We need to act fast, Anderson said, turning to Danielle. People are calling for concrete actions, not just words. I agree, Danielle responded, her voice firm. We're here not only to treat patients, but to ensure they are treated with dignity. Let's call a meeting with the nursing staff and address this issue head-on. And what do you suggest we do? Dr. Thompson asked, raising an eyebrow. Do you think a simple warning is going to change their mindset? Danielle paused, considering the impact this incident could have on the community. No, it won't be enough. We need sensitivity and respect training, a real commitment from us, ***, Danielle said. And this has to include everyone, from the nursing staff to the supervisors. If we don't act now, we'll lose the community's trust. Anderson watched Danielle's determination, recognizing her passion for change. He slowly nodded. You're right. We have to do something before the public decides we're just an institution that doesn't care about its patients, ***, he said. Renee joined the conversation. I can help organize the training, she offered. We can invite experts to speak about the importance of diversity and empathy. Perfect, Danielle said. We need everyone on board. Let's schedule this meeting as soon as possible. The team agreed, and Danielle felt like they were finally making progress toward a common goal. However, there was still hard work ahead, and she knew it wouldn't be easy. Later, at the end of the day, Danielle found Anderson alone in the break room. He seemed deep in thought, staring at his laptop screen. Dr. Carter, he began, without looking away. About what happened? I feel like I didn't do enough. You're not the only one, she replied, sitting down at the table. We all failed, but now we have the chance to make it right. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, Anderson said, finally turning to face Danielle. I had a tough conversation with my daughter about racism recently, and it made me realize we need to change. Danielle was surprised. You have a daughter? Yeah, she's 12. What's happening here affects her more than I'd like to admit, ***, Anderson said, his gaze filled with a mix of concern and resolve. She deserves to grow up in a better world. Danielle smiled, seeing his vulnerability. We all have a responsibility to make sure she and other kids can live in a fair world, she said. I believe we can make a difference. I want to be part of that change, Anderson said, a spark of determination lighting up in his eyes. Count me in. Danielle felt a wave of hope. Anderson's support could be crucial in making the change happen. Together, they could transform St. Clair Hospital into a place where everyone was respected and valued, one step at a time. Great, then let's do this together, she said, extending her hand. For a better future. Anderson shook her hand firmly, both feeling that the gesture marked a new beginning, an important step toward the transformation they both wanted. The fallout from the video of the nurses mocking a black patient reverberated not only among the staff at St. Clair Hospital, but also on social media. The hospital was now under the community's watchful eye, and Danielle felt the pressure to act swiftly. In her office, she was discussing strategies with Renee to address the situation. We need to prepare a public statement, Danielle said, flipping through some papers. We need to take a stand against this kind of behavior. I agree, Renee said, her eyes fixed on the laptop. But we also need to make sure the staff understands the gravity of what happened. If we don't address this internally, what will we say externally? Danielle nodded, realizing that every word in the statement could profoundly impact the hospital's public perception. Maybe we can hold a meeting with the staff and openly discuss the expectations of respect and dignity in patient care, Danielle suggested. And we could propose a new training program, Renee said. That would show we're genuinely committed to making a change. At that moment, Dr. Anderson entered the room, interrupting their thoughts. Hey everyone, what's the plan? He asked, sensing the seriousness in the air. We're discussing how to respond to the video incident, Danielle explained. We need a plan to address the inappropriate behavior and make sure everyone understands the importance of respect. I think we should hold a general meeting and listen to the staff, Anderson suggested. Giving them a safe space to share their thoughts could be a good start. Yes, that would be great, Renee responded. We need everyone to feel like they're part of the change. Danielle looked at Anderson, feeling encouraged by his willingness to contribute. We could do it tomorrow afternoon, she said. We need to act quickly but effectively. Anderson agreed and, before leaving, added, Let's show that St. Clair Hospital is a place where everyone is respected and valued, regardless of skin color. The next morning, the conference room was packed. Staff from various departments gathered, some visibly nervous, others with expectant expressions. Danielle stood at the front, with Anderson and Renee by her side. Thank you all for being here, Danielle began. Today, we want to address an issue that has affected not just our hospital, but also our community. The video that's been circulating on social media was unacceptable and goes against everything we stand for. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. We're here to discuss what happened and how we can make sure it never happens again, Danielle continued. It's crucial that we all understand the importance of respect and patient care. A nurse raised her hand, visibly upset. But what if someone doesn't get it? What if they just don't care? Danielle took a deep breath, recognizing the pain in the nurse's voice. We need to have tough conversations. If someone doesn't feel comfortable speaking up, I encourage you all to come to me or Renee. We can't ignore what happened. Anderson took the floor. I want to stress that each of you plays an important role in this change. We're all in this together, and it's essential that everyone feels heard and respected. We can't let fear of what might happen stop us from having this dialogue. A young nursing technician, Marcus, stood up. I've seen inappropriate behavior before, but I never had the courage to speak up. This is our chance to change things. ***, Marcus said. We need to be the change we want to see. Danielle smiled, appreciating his bravery. Exactly, Marcus. That's the essence of this meeting. We're here to create a supportive, respectful environment where everyone can express themselves. Throughout the meeting, staff began to open up, sharing their experiences and concerns. There were tears, nervous laughter, and a growing sense of camaraderie. It's time we set a new standard, Renee said as the conversation began to wind down. And we're going to need everyone's support to do that. The atmosphere transformed into one of dialogue and empathy. Danielle realized that, despite the challenge, the team was coming together around a shared goal. And so, that day, through honest conversations, something began to change at St. Clair Hospital. After the meeting, Danielle and Anderson spoke privately. That went better than I expected, Danielle said with a smile. People are really willing to make a difference. You did a great job leading the meeting, Anderson complimented. That was inspiring. Change doesn't happen overnight, but this is a great start, Danielle replied. We need to keep this momentum going and continue pushing for improvements. They left the room with a renewed sense of purpose. The journey toward transformation was just beginning, but together, they were determined to ensure that St. Clair Hospital became a place of healing and dignity for all. The day of the training arrived, and St. Clair Hospital was buzzing with activity. Employees from all departments gathered in the auditorium to participate in the diversity and inclusion program that had been developed after the patient incident. Danielle, Renee, and Dr. Anderson prepared to address the audience, fully aware of the importance of what was about to unfold. Danielle stepped onto the stage, her heart racing. She glanced at the crowd, where familiar faces watched her with anticipation. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice softly echoing through the auditorium. "Today, we're here to take an important step toward building a more inclusive and respectful environment in our hospital." There were murmurs of agreement among the staff. As you know, the recent situation with a patient showed us that we still have a lot to learn and a lot of room to grow, Danielle continued. But this is an opportunity for all of us. We're here to change that narrative. Renee, standing next to Danielle, took the microphone. "Today's training will be interactive," she announced. "We want you to feel comfortable sharing your opinions and experiences. We're all here to learn from each other." Dr. Anderson also addressed the audience. We'll start with an activity that will help us better understand each other's perspectives, he explained. Each of you will receive a card with a hypothetical scenario related to bias. We'd like you to discuss in small groups how you would address these situations. The staff dispersed into groups, and the conversation began. Danielle and Renee moved among the groups, listening to the discussions. In one group, a nurse, Clara, spoke passionately. I've worked here for 5 years, and I've always seen how some colleagues treat different patients. It's not fair. We need to do something about it. I completely agree, replied Miguel, a lab technician. If we don't speak up now, when will we? Danielle listened closely, feeling the positive energy in the room. After a while, Dr. Anderson called everyone back to attention. Now, let's discuss some of the situations that came up in your groups, he said. Would anyone like to share? Clara raised her hand again. We discussed a situation where a patient was being treated poorly because of how they looked. Everyone in the group thought we should step in right away. That's exactly what we need, said Renee. If we see something wrong, we must have the courage to act. We can't stay silent anymore. The atmosphere began to warm up, with others standing up to share their stories and opinions. What had started as a formal training turned into an open and honest conversation about biases and challenges faced in everyday life. Danielle looked at Anderson and Renee, smiling with satisfaction. This is exactly what we wanted to achieve, she said. An open and frank conversation. Later, during the break, Danielle found Renee in the hospital kitchen. I'm so proud of what we're doing, said Danielle, grabbing a glass of water. People are really opening up and starting to care. And this is just the beginning, replied Renee. We need to keep this conversation going, even after the training. Meanwhile, Miguel and Clara were chatting in the corner of the room. I've always felt intimidated about talking about these issues, Miguel confessed. But today, I felt encouraged. Me too, Clara responded. We need to keep this alive. We can't let this momentum fade. The training continued, with various activities and discussions that tackled crucial aspects of respect and empathy. The room was buzzing with energy, and people were more engaged than ever before. By the end of the day, Danielle and Anderson were visibly tired but satisfied. I think we've made a good start, said Anderson, wiping his forehead. People really cared. And most importantly, they're willing to change, added Danielle. That's a positive sign. As the crowd began to disperse, Danielle made one last announcement. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Let's keep supporting each other and learning from one another. Renee smiled and turned to Danielle. We're just starting to build a better future, she said. Let's stay focused. And with that, the training day not only educated the staff at St. Clair Hospital, but it also ignited a spark of hope and determination that promised to change the hospital's culture forever. The impact of the diversity and inclusion training at St. Clair Hospital was remarkable. In the days that followed, staff members were more engaged in conversations about empathy and respect. Danielle, Renee, and Dr. Anderson gathered to discuss the next steps. Danielle was excited as she reviewed the feedback collected after the training. Look at this, she said, pointing to a pile of forms. Most people felt that the training was transformative. They really want to make changes. Renee, sitting next to her, smiled. That's amazing. It's not just surface-level change, but a real desire to understand others better. Dr. Anderson, with a thoughtful look, chimed in. We need a plan to keep this momentum going. What do you think about creating a diversity and inclusion committee? We could have regular meetings to discuss progress and challenges. Danielle nodded. That's an excellent idea. We could involve staff from different departments so everyone feels represented. Renee suggested. And maybe host monthly events to promote the inclusive culture, like guest speakers or workshops. The group began drafting an outline for what the committee would look like, excited by the idea of keeping the movement alive. The following week, Danielle decided to visit a few departments to discuss the formation of the committee. She walked into the intensive care unit, where she found Marcos, a nurse who had attended the training. Hey, Marcos, can I steal a minute of your time? She said with a smile. Marcos looked up, surprised. Sure, Danielle. What's going on? We're forming a diversity and inclusion committee, and I wanted to know if you'd be interested in joining, explained Danielle. He hesitated for a moment. You know, I really enjoyed the training, and I feel like we need to keep this conversation going. Yes, I'd love to be part of it. Great. I'll take down your name and reach out to you about the next meeting. Asterisk asterisk, she replied, happy. After visiting other departments, Danielle felt confident that they were building a solid foundation for a more inclusive future at the hospital. In one of the committee meetings, with Renee, Marcos, and other staff present, the energy was palpable. Renee opened the meeting. I'm so excited to see everyone here. Today, we'll be discussing the ideas we gathered during our visits. Marcos raised his hand. I was thinking of a community awareness event, something like an inclusion day, where we could invite the local community to participate and share experiences. Danielle smiled. I love the idea. It could really help build bridges between the hospital and the community, and we can include booths with information about the services we offer and health issues affecting minorities, added Renee. The group began brainstorming more ideas, excited about the opportunity to make a real impact. The atmosphere was full of optimism and determination. Later, Danielle ran into Dr. Anderson in the hallway. The committee is really taking shape, don't you think? She asked. Yes, I'm impressed with the energy everyone's bringing. It's like people finally feel heard. Asterisk asterisk, he replied, pleased. And it's only going to get better. We need to make sure we keep this spirit of change alive. Asterisk asterisk, said Danielle. Dr. Anderson paused to reflect. I think we're on the right track, but we also need to include ongoing training for new employees. We can't let the next generation fall into the same mistakes. Danielle agreed. You're right. That should be part of the onboarding process. Let's bring that idea to the committee at the next meeting. Meanwhile, Clara and Miguel met during a coffee break and discussed the latest news. I heard the committee is forming, and they're planning an inclusion day. I'm excited, Clara said. Yes, it's going to be a great opportunity to bring the community closer and talk about issues that matter. Asterisk asterisk, Miguel replied. We need to get involved. I want people to know that we can make a difference. Asterisk asterisk, Clara said with determination. The atmosphere at the hospital was changing. Conversations about diversity and inclusion were no longer just whispers, but an open dialogue. Change was happening, and everyone was ready to be part of it. At the end of the day, Danielle, Renee, and Dr. Anderson met again to review the committee's progress. It's amazing to see people's enthusiasm, Danielle commented. Yes, and this is just the beginning, Dr. Anderson replied. I'm looking forward to seeing how this will develop. Renee smiled as she looked at her colleagues. Let's keep building together. Change is in our hands. And so, St. Clair Hospital became an example of how collaboration and open dialogue could effectively transform an institution's culture, creating a more welcoming and inclusive environment for everyone. On the day of Inclusion Day, St. Clair Hospital was buzzing with activity and energy. Danielle, Renee, Marcos, and other committee members had worked hard to plan an event that not only educated but also brought the community together to celebrate diversity. Booths were set up in the hospital courtyard, decorated with colorful banners and informational posters. There were stands offering information on health, social services, and even cultural performances. Cheerful music filled the air, and the smell of homemade food added a comforting aroma. Danielle, wearing a shirt displaying the hospital's logo next to a colorful heart, walked around the area, watching the smiling faces of visitors. Renee joined her, holding a tablet. Look at this. We're getting an amazing turnout. Asterisk asterisk, Renee said, her eyes shining. Yes, it's exactly what we hoped for. People are getting involved and talking to each other. Asterisk asterisk, Danielle replied. On the other side of the courtyard, Marcos was talking to a group of children, showing them how to use a stethoscope. He crouched down to their level. Do you know what this tool does? A girl with a wide smile answered. It listens to the heart. Marcos smiled, impressed. Exactly. And if you hear fast beats, that might mean someone is excited. Like I am right now. The children laughed, and he encouraged them to try it out. The energy was contagious. Clara and Miguel were handing out pamphlets about mental health and the importance of self-care when a group of parents approached. These materials are great. Thank you, a mother said. Looking at the pamphlet, mental health is so important, especially for young people. Absolutely. We're here to help and support. Clara responded with a welcoming smile. As the afternoon went on, a group of local artists began performing on the main stage. People gathered, sitting on benches and blankets, as a singer started playing a song with a powerful message about unity and love. Danielle turned to Renee. Look at how people are connecting. This is exactly what we wanted. She said, full of joy. We're making history, Danielle. This is just the beginning. Renee replied, visibly moved. At the end of the event, Dr. Anderson took the stage to give a speech. Thank you all for being here today. This event is a celebration of our community and our commitment to building an inclusive environment. He said with a serious yet warm look. We must remember that as we make progress, the work doesn't end here. True change happens when we continue these conversations every day. The crowd applauded, and a group of people began shouting words of support. The mood was one of hope and unity. After the speech, Danielle and Renee met with Dr. Anderson. You were amazing on stage, Dr. Anderson, Danielle complimented. Your speech really resonated with people. Thank you. But all of this is about you and the hard work you've put in to make this happen. Dr. Anderson responded. I can't wait to see where this takes us in the future, Renee said, full of enthusiasm. At that moment, a woman approached with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to thank you. I'm the mother of an autistic boy, and for so long, I haven't found a place where I felt welcome. Today, I saw so many different people coming together, and it was simply wonderful. She said. Emotional. Danielle felt a wave of emotion. This is exactly what we aimed for. A safe space for everyone. She replied, shaking the woman's hand. As the day came to an end, the committee members gathered to discuss the event. It was an absolute success. We could do this every year. Marco suggested. Yes, and we could include even more activities and workshops. Renee added. And we need to start planning the next event now. We can't lose this momentum, Danielle said. Dr. Anderson stepped in. Before we wrap up, I want everyone to know that the work we're doing here is essential. It's not just about the hospital, but about the change we want to see in society. Each of you is a part of that. A sense of camaraderie filled the air, and they felt like they were part of something bigger. The transformation they were initiating at St. Clair Hospital wasn't just an institutional change, but a seed planted in the community that could blossom and create a lasting impact. At the end of the day, as the lights dimmed and people began to leave, Danielle looked around and saw happy faces, lively conversations, and smiles. A sense of pride and hope washed over her. She knew that change was possible and that, together, they could continue to make history. The journey was far from over, but in that moment, she felt optimistic about the future. And the transformation that had begun that day was only starting to unfold, opening paths for more love, understanding, and inclusion.